Survival Movies, Captain Musgrave's Forgotten Adventure, Part 2. Welcome back. If you thought Part 1 was wild, wait until you see how God's hand works in this next chapter. Captain Musgrave might be out of lifeboats, but he's never out of faith. No, we didn't hire Morgan Freeman to narrate. Turns out prayer doesn't stretch the budget. But who needs him when you've got a story that gives all the glory to the Lord? So buckle up. This isn't just survival. It's a reminder that God's grace is the ultimate life raft. And with that we continue. Water. From this time till midnight experienced a hard gale, high sea, heavy rain, and thick fog. At 2 a.m. bore to westward, and at 5 a.m. the gale moderated. Made sail accordingly. At 8 a.m. all sails set, and at 9 a.m. made Auckland Island again, South Cape bearing NNE, distant about 25 miles. At noon took the Peak Reef to weather the island. I have determined to go under its lee, and if possible cast anchor off Sarah's bosom. Mr. Renal is much better today. Noon. Moderate breeze and gloomy. Took sights at 2 p.m. South Cape bearing NNE by compass, variation 2 points east. Latitude 51 degrees 9 minutes south. Longitude 166 degrees 17 minutes, and would put the South Cape in longitude 166 degrees 46 minutes, .1. The longitudes do not exactly correspond with Bowditch, who gives 2, which differ 20 miles, one being 166 degrees 7 minutes, and the other 166 degrees 27 minutes. Winds, 2 p.m., WNW, 10 p.m., WSW, 3 a.m., SW, 8 a.m., West, Friday, New Year's Day, 1864. At noon, one point of the island bore north by west, and South Cape bore northeast by north, distant about 8 miles. As we approach the island, I find that it bears precisely the same appearance as Campbell's Island, and the mountains are about the same height. At 3 p.m. entered a harbor which I suppose is Sarah's bosom. First and middle parts of the 24 hours moderate breeze and moderately clear weather. The entrance of the harbor runs east and west. We beat in, but found no bottom at 20 fathoms, even close into the rocks, kept under way all night. We saw great numbers of sea seals as we beat up. At every tack we made, they came off from the shore to look at us and played round the ship like porpoises. 6 a.m., put the boat out and sent her away to look for an anchorage, but found none. 8 a.m., I let go the bower in strong breeze from NW, which increased to a gale. She rode through the harbor, to which there was no road. An hour strong gale from NW, with heavy rain, brought up at the NE edge of the harbor in 6 fathoms of water, and veered out about 100 or 120 miles from the sea. We here had a very difficult job holding the vessel, and she got yet in a good anchorage, but knotted from the chain over 30 fathoms chain on each. This is all the good here we have got. I consider here in a rather dangerous position, as it is often calm at the bottom, in the center of the place. The heavy winds come from the SW. There is a swell on, and the strain trying in such an anchorage. The rain and gale continued 36 hours, ending at 8 a.m., Saturday, January 2nd, 1864. Winds, northwest first part. Barome, noon, 29.45, midnight 29.3, Saturday, January 2nd, 1864. Very heavy gale throughout the day, with heavy rain. There is a considerable swell running, and the ship lays pitching against the chain and rolling very heavily. The chain seems to part every moment. At 7 p.m., in a heavy squall, the starboard chain paid out about 3 fathoms outside the pipe, leaving about 35 fathoms on the anchor, and the port or sheet bower dragged a considerable distance and then brought her up again. Her stern is about 1/4 to 2 fathoms, about half a cable's length from the shore. She is laying somewhat parallel with the shore, and should the wind come from the SW, we must most inevitably go into the rocks, and I have no hope for my mind for the worst. I see no hope of her keeping clear. Barometer, 29.80, and falling fast. 10 p.m. The wind is so light, should I slip the cable with a spring, she would not clear the point, or I might slip and run out to sea. At every heave of the swell, she is dragging the anchor home and getting nearer to shore. From 10 p.m. till midnight, the gale blew with the most terrific violence, and precisely at midnight the ship struck, but we hung on to the cable in hopes that the wind would moderate as the tide rose, as it was then low water. Wind from northwest to west, northwest, and sometimes. Sunday, January 3rd, 1864. After midnight the gale increased and blew with the most unimaginable violence, and we found that she was an unavoidable wreck. She lay broadside onto the beach, and the sea made a clean breach over her. At every surge we expected the mast to go over the side. We had veered out all the cable. We saw pieces of her keel coming up under her lee, and she made much water, but we kept at the pumps till we found she was filling fast, and the water was rushing into her like a boiling spring. This was at 2:15 in the morning. We abandoned the pumps and commenced getting the provisions on deck, which did not occupy much time, as our stock was very small. In a quarter of an hour she was full up to the top of the cabin table, and the sea was breaking heavily over her. The seas was so heavy on the beach that I considered it dangerous to attempt landing till daylight. We remained on deck, and at daylight commenced hauling our provisions and clothes. We had much difficulty in landing, as it is a stony beach, and the surf was all foam and boiling water. About 10 a.m., we had succeeded in landing the things most important without doing much damage to the boat. We brought the mainsail and got it on shore to make a tent, and we got one musket and the ground, which is very weak. Raynal has walked about looking for a dry spot to pitch a tent. Wind NW to WNW Sunday, January 3rd, 1864. We walked about till near dark, landed here, and in my time this beach is now occupied. We had seen 2 seals lying on the rocks. At 6 p.m. the men came back, and we have nothing to eat for 3 days, and landed provisions which we covered over in a tent. A gale of wind blowing, we are all wet, and nothing is dry. At 5, eating and seeking dry ground. South today is also a very fine day, with a moderate NW breeze. Last Monday we went on board the wreck, and got all the boards we could muster to make a floor in the tent, as we had all got severe colds from lying on the wet ground. We also unbent the sails, and sent down all the yards and topmasts, and stowed them for building a house, as in all probability we shall have to remain here all next winter. And if we want to preserve life, we must have shelter. We have worked very hard, and although we have been so wet, we have succeeded in getting up the frame of the house. There is plenty of timber where we are camped, and also a beautiful creek of clear water. So, with the timber for flooring, we intend to make a proper log house, so we shall put down the pieces of timber and boards. The seals are very numerous here. They go roaring up and down the rocks like wild cattle. Indeed, we expect they will come and storm the tent some night. We live chiefly on seal's meat, as we have to be very frugal with our own little stock. We kill left at the door of the tent as we require them. If we had been to raise enough or have kept the vessel afloat, I have no doubt but for 2 months or less we should have loaded her. Mine appears a hard fate. After getting so where I might have made up for what has been lost, I lose the means of doing so. The vessel leaves her bones here, and God only knows whether we are all to leave our bones here also, and what is to become of my poor unprovided for family. It drives me mad to think of it. I can write no more. Sunday, January 17, 1864. Another week of calm has passed, during which we have had tolerably fine weather. The first part was fresh and rained. On Thursday it rained all day. In the evening I went across the bay in the boat and shot a dozen widgeon, of which we ate 2, and the remainder, with 4 others which I shot this morning, we are keeping, as we have abundance of seal meat, and which I find very good, particularly the females and young ones, but we cannot use the bull seals. We got some young ones which had never been to sea. I believe this delicious meat is a real Welsh lamb. We have also got 2 carcasses in salt. We have no occasion to go far after them, as they come close to the tent. Indeed, we were very nearly without some the other night, when a large bull seal came right up and would come into the tent, and to frighten them away, I put a bullet into one of their heads, which had the desired effect. We are now well supplied with provisions for some time. We cooked the largest bull seal we have yet got, and it was the one which I shot on Sunday. I sent the men on board, and found the vessel had not broken up much, and still lies on her keel. This week we commenced saving the chronometer and other things that might be of use. I slipped the chain for the small bower to clear a lead of the anchors, and then got 2 grapnels to hook the chain at all the flood. I put them on board the vessel in all, and after being all directions, when you kill them, in the water they sink like a stone. But I think they might be taken in the water with a harpoon. We are progressing slowly with the house. It will become our residence till it is ready for living in. I have been on board the wreck several times during the week, and I see that there are seals and crabs in the hold. This is the end of the wreck for now. I intend to lay her on her other bilge if possible till the spring tides, and ascertain what damage is done to her bottom. It is possible we may be able to make her carry us to New Zealand yet. Mr. Reynal is almost quite well. He has been working a little all this week. He is a valuable cook, and makes seal pies for us. We are very badly off for tools. All we have got is a hammer, an axe, an adze, and a gimlet. Tuesday, January 19, 1864. Light easterly airs and cloudy weather during the last 2 days. This morning we went down the harbor in the boat and planted a flagstaff, with a large canvas flag on it, where it may be seen from the sea, and fixed a bottle to it, with a note inside it directing anyone who may see it where to find us. We then went up the western arm of the harbor to its head, which is about 10 or 11 miles from the eastern entrance. Here we found a narrow passage out to sea, on the western side of the island. The passage out on the western side is about 3/4 of a mile long, and a quarter cable's length wide. We did not think it prudent to explore this passage with the boat, as the sea was rushing rapidly through it, and there was a heavy swell running and breaking on both sides. It's run nearly north and south, the south end opening to the sea, I should suppose not far from the South Cape. At this place we saw hundreds of seals. Both the shores and the water were literally swarming with them. I think there is a black seal, but in general the tiger seals keep close at the foot of the shore, and the black seals, which are much the largest, are about on the rocks. We saw large numbers of them in the water, sitting up like fighting. They were at it when we first saw them, and watched them about half an hour, and then came up and gave it. They fought as ferociously as dogs, only they bite to the least noise. With their large tusks they tear each other almost to pieces. We also saw a sea lion. He was very large and had been fighting and was covered with blood. It was a most fearful muss. Large pieces of hide and flesh were torn off, perhaps a foot long. They swam after each other, and we counted 10 or 12 of them within a short distance of us. Get our death of cold before we get out of it yet, and the blowflies blow our blankets and clothes, and make everything in the most disgusting state imaginable. A kind of mosquito is very troublesome in the daytime also, but fortunately they do not bite at night. We have several kinds of birds here also, 2 kinds of which are songsters, and send forth beautiful notes. And there is the green parrot and robin redbreast. They are all very tame. We could put out our hands and take hold of them, but we do not disturb them. The robins are very familiar with us. They come into the tent and chirp round us when we are at our meals, and are quite tame. This morning we went up the western arm of the harbor. I shot a dozen of widgeon and young ducks, and we picked up a piece of a standing sail boom on the beach, which had evidently not been lying there very long. We also found a seal dead on the beach, which I shot about a week ago close to where we were camped. The ball entered just before the shoulder, but he was quite close to the water, and got in and swam before I could get a shot to kill him. Where we found him is about 8 or 9 miles from here. I have taken a sketch of the western arm. The water is very deep, with bold rocky shores, 10 fathoms deep 50 yards from the shore, and we nowhere found bottom with a 20-fathom line at 100 yards from the shore. Sunday, January 24th, 1864. The weather has been tolerably fine since I last wrote, although it has been blowing a westerly gale ever since, and on Friday it rained heavily all day, with thunder and lightning in the evening. We have all been busy about the house, and I think we shall be able to get into it towards the end of this week at the latest. This morning I started to go on the mountain which rises to the northeast of us to have a look round. I went alone, as my Norwegian friend, whom I had for a traveling companion, can only hobble, as I said. He is unable to walk much, and Mr. Raynol's legs are not strong enough for traveling very far. In going up I found tall rocks nearly to the top of the mountain, which is of basalt. This curious volcanic formation appears to be of the same nature as that seen on the shores, for I picked up several large pieces, and think that it is much like slag or refuse. I must say that it is not so large as I expected it would be. It is a strange-looking country, and covered in many places with long, coarse grass, with here and there a patch of furze or stunted scrub, and there are numerous streams of water running out of them. In fact, the whole of the ground on the heights where I stood was one mass of bog, and quite destitute of grass or herbage of any kind. But there is any quantity of granite rock. As I went up, I found the varieties totally good. As it is, I cannot range, which is always the best. But on coming back, I came out on the face of the mountain and encountered a number of ravines, through which I had considerable difficulty to get, until I struck at the seal tracks, which do not go so far up here. They are covered with low scrub from the very summit, which marks the extent of the life of the bush. This big bush, as we call it, is where the largest timber grows. It extends about a mile from the water all round the shores of this harbor, which, taking up the bay, is not less than 60 or 70 miles. This timber is all unbark and solid oak, but the bark of the timber is not like that of the Australian. This is as thin as brown paper, but the wood is precisely the same. It does not grow straight. You can scarcely get a straight piece out of 40 feet long. It would make excellent timber for the frame of a ship, and there are any quantity of splendid knees. This is the timber I am speaking of now. The oak is not much good for anything but burning. On Tuesday last, I had a very narrow escape from being shot. We were up the bush after a seal, which gave us a very exciting chase. I suppose we followed him 5 miles. They can run very fast in the bush. My gun had been loaded for 2 days, and the powder had got damp. After snapping 3 or 4 times, I got one barrel off, and the ball went into his neck and out again between his shoulders. However, as a proof of how hard they are to kill, this did not stop him long enough for us to get up to him. I did not stop to load again, and it is impossible to load running in this bush, but pricked the powder up in the barrel and ignited it again. The cap snapped, but the gun did not go off. I brought the barrel to my shoulder, went with the butt to the ground, and ignited the other barrel again, which still went snap, and the ball passed through the line of my hat. They killed the bull before I got down with him again, but however, lift the foot to the beach. We left her moored to the wreck, but she got stove in there, for the sea struck her and started all the ends of the planks on the port bow. We have not yet undertaken to repair her, as we have been too busy with the house. We kept at work at it in spite of the bad weather, and we even worked at it on last Sunday. On Tuesday we came into it, and I am glad to say that we shall be much more comfortable. The house is 24 feet by 16 feet. The chimney is 8 feet by 5 feet, built of stone. We shall be able to have a roaring fire in it in the winter, if we are so unfortunate as to have to remain here till that time. And God help those at home, whom it almost drives me mad to think of. We have as yet had plenty to eat, But whether they have or not, God only knows. For the last 3 weeks we have killed a cow and calf each week. We only cut the cow and calf tiger seals. The black seal is not good, and the bulls are all very rank. We killed a cow and her calf this morning. We got milk from the cow after she was killed, which is very rich and good, much better even than goat's milk. We have not had time to go fishing in the boat yet, but I have no doubt but there is plenty of fine fish in the harbor, for we have had several dishes of small cod, which we catch amongst the kelp at low water. We also get plenty of mussels at low water springs. Up to the present time the men have worked well, and conducted themselves in a very obedient and respectful manner towards me. But I find there is somewhat of a spirit of obstinacy and independence creeping in amongst them. It is true I no longer hold any command over them, but I share everything that has been saved from the wreck in common with them, and I have worked as hard as any of them in trying to make them comfortable, and I think gratitude ought to prompt them to still continue willing and obedient. But you might as well look for the grace of God in a Highlandman's logbook as gratitude in a sailor. This is a well-known fact. They are not yet disposed to do anything that I have told them to do, but they do it in that manner which says plainly, "Why don't you do it yourself?" On Monday last, the barometer was down to 29.2, which is the lowest I have ever seen it. Thermometer stands at about 48 degrees to 50 degrees. Saturday, February 14th, 1864. During the first part of the past week, we had very heavy and almost constant rain, wind moderate, and generally from between west and NW. On Thursday morning, we had a light air from the eastward, which is the first fair wind we have had since we came here. Since Wednesday, the weather has been very fine, with moderate westerly winds, but it has rained in passing showers, more or less. This is a dreadful place for rain, but still we appear to have got to a place where it falls least. There is one place where it scarcely ever ceases raining. It is caused by the form of the land in that particular place, which we have named Rainy Corner, which is backed by a very high mountain which bursts the low clouds as they pass over it. I have been working at the boat and have got her in first-rate order, much better than when we got her. The men have been jobbing about the house and cutting long grass to thatch the walls with outside. Since we came into the house, we have arranged that one man shall cook for a week, and that they will take it in turns. And as Mr. Raynal wished to take his turn with the rest, I did not object to his doing so. He was cook last week. They change on Saturday night. And an excellent cook he is. He has set the others a good example for cleanliness and good cooking, and I hope they will follow it. He very frequently gave us 4 courses at a meal. Anyone might wonder where we got anything to make 4 courses of, but we are like the shellfish. We get the most at spring tides. One would be stewed or roasted seal, fried liver, fish, and mussels. We got a young seal on Friday, but we have not had a large one since last Sunday, which we cut up and salted like bacon. It is now hanging up, and I think this will be the best way of keeping the meat. We have tried several ways to preserve the skins without salting, so as to make clothes out of them, but we have not succeeded yet. We cannot get them dried without something on them, as the flies destroy them, and there is no bark that will tan. We have not had any seals about the tent or house since I shot the fellow in the stream. Since noon it has come on to blow stiff, with squalls from WNW. Barometer 29.30. Thermometer ranging from 48 degrees to 52 degrees. Went out with the gun this morning and got a few wiggins. Sunday, February 21st, 1864. I am in exceeding low spirits today, and I know that one loved one in Sydney is so also, for I have no doubt by this time they have given me up for lost, and what is to become of my own dear wife and children. May God, to whom only they can now look for comfort, watch over and protect them, is my constant and fervent prayer. I shall never forgive myself for coming on this enterprise, although strong inducements prompted me to the undertaking. And although the chief object of my coming was a failure, the sealing would have done very well, and I should have made a good thing of it, had the old chains only held the ship to her anchors. I could have loaded her with hides in a month and should have been in Sydney before this time. However, this was an accident over which I had no control, and God in his wisdom knows best why I am left here, and how long we may remain here. But surely our friends will send someone to look after us by some means or other, for I told them before leaving that if any accident did happen to the vessel, it was much more likely to happen here than at sea, so it is to be hoped they will exert themselves in finding some means of getting a vessel sent to look for us. But if they do send one, it is not likely to be before next October or November, as I suppose people would not come down into these stormy and unexplored regions in the winter now approaching. And this is certainly a very stormy place, and the wind is almost constantly blowing out of the harbor and blowing a gale. On a stranger there is not more than 1 day out of 3 that a vessel could beat up against it. During the last week we have had the finest weather that we have had since we came here. We have had no rain until yesterday, when it rained heavily from noon till 8 p.m. Today it is blowing a heavy and very squally NW gale, with thick mist and rain. Yesterday the wind was north-northwest and a hot wind, such as is felt in New Zealand. We have had it before, but not since we came here. The thermometer was up to 60 degrees, which is usually about 48 degrees, barometer at 29.25. On Wednesday we went out in the boat, in the boots, and in 2 hours and a half shot 150 pounds weight of wigeon, and a 1-year-old seal, part of which we had roasted for dinner today. It was delicious. It took 3 men a whole day to pluck the wigeon. I don't know how many there are of them. We have got them salted and hung up. They are in reserve for the winter when we may not be able to go out to look for food. During the remainder of the time, we have been occupied in laying ways for hauling up and launching the boat on, and making a jetty, cutting down and clearing the timber from about the house, and getting and tying in bundles of thatch for the sides of the house, etc. I will take an immense quantity of grass to thatch it round. I may here give a description of this castle of ours. It is 24 feet long by 16 wide. The walls are 7 feet high, roof 14 feet. The corner posts and center posts, which are made of spars from the ship, as also the wall plates and ridge poles, are 1.5 feet into the ground. The walls, or sides and ends, are made of timbers out of the bush, placed upright and let into the ground about 6 inches. They are from being straight, consequently they are not from being close together. This is very one of the reasons to thatch them. They are now covered with old canvas brought from the wreck, but it lets a great deal of wind through. The door is a very good one, made of inch boards. The floor is also boarded, and tolerably good. There are 2 small squares of glass, which are set out each side of the vessel. The rafters are made of saplings out of the bush, placed 2 feet apart. There is a double course of rafters, 1 on each row of rafters, and 2 ridge poles. The fireplace is built up with stone, and the walls of the house are plastered with mud made of copper, tin, and sea, and nails towards the top, and it is lined with brush. The fireplace inside the house is 6 feet, with 1 hearthstone. The flue inside the house walls is 6 feet wide, as I before mentioned. There are 2 bunks, or beds, with benches on the outside, also a dresser or locker, a table with 1 leaf. There is also a shelf. It is so dark in the house it is hard to read or write inside. Sunday, February 28th, 1864. Another dreary week has passed. We have had very bad weather. It has rained every day. We have not been able to do much at the thatching, but we have made a commencement yesterday, and worked at it between the showers. Last night it blew a very heavy gale from south-southwest, with frequent heavy showers. On Wednesday, Mr. Reynal went across the bay in the boat and got a 1-year-old seal and 2 dozen wigeon. These we find very good, salted and smoke-dried. He also tried fishing, but it came on to rain, and he was obliged to return without catching any. We have found a root, which is very abundant all over the island, and it is very good food. It makes a very good substitute for bread and potatoes. There is also a great deal of sugar in it. We intend to make sugar from it. We have also found a method of curing the seal skins without salt. This is by stretching them and fleshing them clean, and rubbing them well with strong lye, made from ashes, 2 or 3 times a day, until they are perfectly dry. Then scorn them well with sandstone, take them down, roll them up tight, and heat them on something solid with a stone 2 or 3 days until they are quite soft. This does not injure the fur, and renders them quite soft. We shall be able to make either blankets or clothes of them. I keep one on one of them now, and it is very comfortable. Amongst the birds with which the woods abound, there are immense flocks of pigeons. Some of them are so tame that they come and feed out of our hands, and come to the house and remain there for hours. They also fly to the house in flocks when the hawks are after them. We should all have built huts to come near. We have had a heavy drift fresh from the eastward, with 24 hours heavy rain. During the week the gale was variable, and blew very heavily until last night, and today a SSW barometer 29.50, thermometer 45 degrees. Tuesday, March 8th, 1864. The first part of the past week has been very wet, wind constantly west and north, but it moderated, and today we have been able to do a little work. It has been mostly blowing in gales and squalls. On Monday, we found a good store of sealskins, which had been well cleaned and stored properly, but we had been unable to make any more coverings for the house at present. I have named from its shape, and I discovered a reef of rocks which are dry at low water. They bear about southwest from the northwest end of the island and the center of the reef, which is round and composed of sharp, loose rocks. It is about a cable's length from the nearest shore and connected with it. There is barely a passage for a boat, and we were never outside for the distance of a cable and a half, where the center drops suddenly into 8 fathoms close to the edge and deepens from that outwards. But I was not particular about making fine fish from it, as it came on to rain, and we ransied about, as our principal business at present is to look for food. We had a land seal on the island, and found 3 mobs of seals asleep. There were from 30 to 40 in each mob, and there were a great many very young calves amongst them. These we wanted to get without killing the old ones. I had only 2 men with me, so we took our clubs and asked of us to look as mob, and I suppose in 10 seconds we had knocked down 10 calves from 2 to 3 months old, and 1 2-years-old seal. We had to go right in amongst them, and although they woke up, we were so quick about the job that they stared at us in confusion for a moment, and then by a simultaneous movement rushed towards the water. We could have got more, but one of the men was at this moment attacked by the only remaining one, which was a tremendous large bull, the largest tiger seal I have seen. They were all tigers, and he fought like a tiger. We immediately rushed to the rescue. The poor fellow was obliged to take to the seal till we came up, when all 3 set onto the seal, and he showed great bravery. It was as long as 10 minutes before we got ourselves out of his clutches. We should have been quite willing to get out of his way, but he would not give us a chance. We were in a thick bush, so that he had a decided advantage. However, we left him, as he was far too much for us. This was the greatest piece of excitement I have had for a long time. We got our booty into the boat, which was quite a load for her, and returned home again. We had half my gun in the room, which I had shot before landing. I had left my gun in the boat, or else I should have shot the big seal. We sailed all the next evening, waiting for a chance we kept for present use, and this afternoon I found a young seal, no more than a month or 6 weeks old, sitting shivering at the edge of the water. I took him up in my arms. He appeared to be fast, and not in a condition to resist. I was, however, unwilling to keep him, but this of course we could not do, as he would eat nothing but fish, and not even that yet, so we killed him. I think he had lost his mother, for he was very thin and small, and had nothing at all in his inside. So this is more food for present. God is certainly good in sending us plenty to eat. I hope and pray that he will go on as he has begun, to keep us in the same way. The Grafton is breaking up fast today. There is a heavy surf on her at the place. Her decks are now gone. The barometer has been very high throughout the week. It has not been below 29.50 until today, when it fell, from 10 o'clock last night till 9 o'clock this morning, from 29.58 to 29.42. The thermometer has been about 48 degrees. Till today it is 47 degrees. Sunday, March 13th, 1864. My heart is very heavy as I sit down to write, somewhat similar to what it might do if I was about writing a love letter. I know that many a bitter tear has been shed for me in this time, and in this time also it has been the end of another dreary month since I left those I loved so much. And how many more must pass, or how they will pass them, we must meet again, or whether we shall ever meet again on earth. I know not only. These thoughts, and such as these, which now prey continually on my mind, are maddening. I feel as if I was gradually consumed by an inward fire. I try, by occupying my hands as much as possible, to dispel these sad feelings, but it is utterly impossible. A melancholy habit is forming of me. I am getting as thin as a lantern, and some disordered fluttering and heavy beating of the heart, which causes a faintness, is troubling me. I have felt this before, but only on one particular occasion, and that is some time ago. Were it not for the hope that I shall yet again be of service to my family, I think my spirit, if not my health, would break down, although, under these severe afflictions, my continual prayer is that God may soon deliver me out of them. During the week the weather has been variable, wind generally from northwest. On Wednesday we had a very heavy gale, similar to the one the Grafton went on shore in, wind baffling between northwest and southwest. On Friday, Mr. Raynal and others went to Figure of Eight Island. They killed 7 young seals. There were great numbers on the island. They might have killed any quantity, but we did not want them. We make and dry what we cannot use fresh. Barometer 29.70, thermometer 48 degrees. Sunday, March 20th, 1864. During the last week, we have had 2 days of succession of weather, gales, which only cease for a few hours and then blow again with great fury, and we have had rained almost constantly until yesterday at noon. Since then, we have had very frequent falls of hail and snow. Some of the mountain are now quite capped with snow. I fear we shall have a great deal of this sort of weather in the winter. However, we have got a good stock of meat hanging up in the house, and so long as we can get to the rocks, we shall not starve. But these rocks will not keep long out of the ground. We were obliged to pull them as we want them. We had a few pounds more of meat taken on Friday, and we were to Figure of Eight Island, and found the seals, both young and old, very numerous. But this time we had a regular battle with them, and some 30 or 40 were killed on the beach. We quite enough to eat, and 7 young calves. There were 4 of us. Mr. Raynal had the gun, but I told him not to fire unless he had good reason to avoid it, so he stood by as a reserve, while we pounced onto them with our clubs, and there was not a shot fired. We killed a number of old ones, but 3 we had to leave, as they would only have been an encumbrance to us, and the seals were running around in such numbers and in such a threatening manner that we hurried away as fast as possible. There was a great many young ones left on the island, and there is no doubt but they would have helped us with increased numbers and attacked us again. The very young ones do not like to be taken at the edge of the water. When they are very young, they get into the water. The old cow carries them on her back, or rather carries it, for I have not seen any of them with more than 1 calf, and they have a sort of a place on their backs to do the water stuff. I have known a cow to be 3 days in getting the calf half a mile to get it into the water. When you surprise the calves when they are staying at the edge of the water, they will always run on shore and make for the bush. The last time that Raynal went without me, the seals were very savage. In the water they attacked the boat. One left the marks of his teeth in a seat, and another one was going to jump into the boat, but Reynal shot him. When they are killed in the water, they sink like a stone. We have got a nest of young parrots. I think we have had them at the house a fortnight now. The steward attends to them. They are getting on very well. I think it very strange to find parrots here at all, and it is more surprising that they should have young ones at this season of the year. The common field mouse is also here. I do not know whether they are very numerous all over the island or not, but there are a good many about the house. We have not been able to do anything at the thatching this week. About 1/3 of the house is finished, and the grass is all bundled for the remainder. We are only waiting for weather to put it on, but whether it will ever be favorable again or not, I cannot say. In going to and from the island on Friday last, I sounded all the way. I found a bank with 15 fathoms on it in the middle of the harbor, and well to windward of this is good anchorage ground. It will be, however, in the chart I have formed of the island, and as I have not yet marked it on the points, it is useless to note down any bearings here. We were all in the rain. A wall soon have enough to make a suit of clothes each. The skin is so black that I am writing with no more black ink as it is done. I think this will do very well. There is no getting it out of our clothes, although we used the strong lye and soft soap, which we made ourselves wild of scrubbing. The seals are beginning to be very savage towards us. Barometer 28.78, thermometer 46 degrees. Sunday, March 27th, 1864. During the first part of the last week, we had the usual heavy weather of gales, with a good deal of hail and snow. The weather was more moderate on Thursday, when we were enabled to go and look for more seals. We searched some places, particularly the reefs in the southwest and beyond, where we had not been before, and found an abundance of seals, but they were very wild and savage, and we had great trouble to get near enough to kill them. I have no doubt but that we shall be able to get more if we can. I do not think we shall be able to use them in future, if we do not take them before they come into the water. But we must wait for the weather, as we do not want to expose ourselves to any unnecessary danger. We have made a good deal of progress in our house. We have only 2 rooms completed. Today I went to the back of the harbor. I have not been there before. This is the most remarkable harbor, quite broad enough for any ship to work up. It is about a half-mile wide in the narrowest place, which is about the entrance, and in some places it is about 1.5 miles wide. I find this is the principal place to anchor a vessel in. It is well sheltered from the prevailing winds, and it is only when the loose clouds drift upon the wind, which are so frequent and dangerous in this part of the harbor. The depth of water in the middle harbor is from 30 fathoms at the entrance gradually decreasing, and good anchorage can be found in from 12 down to 4 fathoms at high tide, about 1.5 miles from the head of the harbor, and the water shallows gradually for this 1.5 miles. That a great deal of the head of the bay must be left dry at low water. It was full of weed in the trip up there. There are several streams of beautiful water emptying into the bay. 2 of them are the largest I have yet found in any part of the islands. We tried fishing, but unsuccessfully. We killed 1 seal and a number of widgeon, and returned home. We did not see any seals on shore, but we saw great numbers in the water. I suppose as it was a fine day they were all out fishing. There must be great numbers of fish in this harbor to supply so many seals, but we have not yet found out how to catch them. All the fish we have got as yet we have picked up amongst the seaweed and stones on the beach at low water. During the last day or 2, all the snow has disappeared from the mountains. I hope we shall have some fine weather yet before the winter sets in. The barometer is very high today, 30.20, and the thermometer 47 degrees in the shade. I have found another small bottle of black ink, so I shall use it while it lasts, for I see that the seal's blood fades away very much. Sunday, April 3rd, 1864. Since last Sunday we have had tolerably fine weather, although we have had 2 days of heavy misty weather, but mild withal. The wind has generally been very light. The prevailing wind at midnight last night shifted to southwest, and has blown a fresh breeze, with occasional hail, and some hail throughout today. The barometer has kept very high, and it is now at 30.20. The thermometer at sunrise was 46 degrees. At noon, barometer 29.92. On Monday last, we went to Figure of 8 Island to look for more seals. We found a great many young seals and calves, but they were all very wild and savage. I think it will be as much as we can do to get as many as we want, as we do not intend sealing any more than need. We generally get one fine day in the week, when we can go and get more, and we can keep the meat a week very well now, for the flies are nearly all gone, and we keep it hanging at the top of a high tree, where they do not touch it. While on the island we found a place where some party had camped at some time. There is no doubt but that they were killing seals, as we found a number of bricks, which no doubt had been used for their fry works. There had been 2 tents pitched, and from the appearance of the ground where they had their fire, I should judge that they had remained about a week. The ground all over these islands, except on the mountains, is of a turfy nature, and burns away wherever a fire is made. It is by this means that I judge from the place where the fire has been how long they have remained. How long it is since they were here, I am unable to conjecture, but it is evident that ships visit this harbor sometimes. Very probably it has been a whaler come in for wood or water, and finding the seals so numerous has taken a few. I am delighted to see even this sign of ships coming here. There is no doubt but we shall be released from our bondage sometime, perhaps sooner than we expect. May it please God for it to be so. We sounded all round one of the heads of this harbor, taking soundings all the way, and I find anchorage in 10 and 11 fathoms. But there is an excellent anchorage in 15 fathoms between Figure of 8 Island and Round Point. On Wednesday, Mr. Raynal and I went to try fishing from the shore. We caught one very nice little cod, about 3 pounds weight, but the seals were round in swarms which drove the fish away. We found a place about 3 miles from the house where a fearful rush of water has come down from the mountains very recently, tearing away trees, earth, and rocks in its track to the harbor. We now found only a very small stream trickling down its bed, and if the terrific rush of water which has made this havoc has been caused by the thaw of the little snow which was on the hills a fortnight ago, I don't know what we may expect after the winter's snow. However, our house stands on pretty high ground. I think it will be out of all danger. Sunday, April 10th, 1864. Another month is now nearly gone since we commenced this unfortunate voyage. The days are getting short, and a long, stormy, dreary winter is before us, without the slightest prospect of getting away. And how those dear ones which I left managed to battle with the misery in which my ambition and folly has plunged them, I dare not think. Oh, if they were only here with me, how happy would be my condition compared with what it is, for I am provided with a good shelter, and plenty to eat, and I should then think that they shared these blessings at least. But as it is, I know not to what extremities they may be reduced. My urgent prayer to heaven is that I may be permitted to retain my health and reason through this fearful and distressing trial. During the past week we have had very little fine weather. Monday was the only fine day we have had, and on this day we went to Figure of 8 Island, and without much trouble got 4 young calves. The seals were as plentiful as ever on the island. We took 2 without getting amongst the old at all. The other 2 we were obliged to go in amongst a mob to get, but it was admirably done. We are getting quite expert at the business. Myself and one of the men ran in amongst them, knocked down and dragged away the 2 young ones, before the old ones had time to collect themselves sufficiently to offer any resistance. On Tuesday morning it was quite calm. We went down to the harbor to look at the flag we put there some time ago. We found that the flag was entirely blown away, and the staff, which is a stout pole, and was well set into the ground, was nearly blown down, and the bottle, which was well tied to it, was also shaken down and lying on the ground. It requires something exceedingly well fastened in the ground to withstand the almost constant and terrific gales which blow here. I intend to put up a white board in such a manner that it cannot blow down on the first fine day. Before we arrived at Flagstaff Point, it commenced to blow from the north-northwest. We had no time to lose, but returned as quickly as possible, and it was as much as we could do with 3 oars and me sculling to get across the bay, and under the lee of the weather shore. Indeed, several times, when we were losing ground, I thought we should have to run back and beach the boat somewhere. However, we managed to get across, pulled nearly to the head of the harbor, and taking in ballast, sailed across to the house, where we arrived at 5 p.m., drenched with rain and spray, and fainting with hunger, for we had had nothing to eat since breakfast. Our first intention in going afloat was to try fishing, but being unsuccessful and the morning so fine, I determined on going down to look at the flag. Our first intention in going afloat was to try fishing, but being unsuccessful and the morning so fine, I determined on going down to look at the flag. It is almost impossible to catch fish here with lines, as the seals are attracted by you, and come round in such numbers that they drive the fish away. In going down the harbor, I took a number of soundings, and I have discovered another reef of rocks, which are dry at low water spring tides, and might prove very dangerous to anyone working up for the middle harbor, where the best anchorage is, as they lay about a cable's length from the southern point of its entrance, and a vessel would naturally bring that point, so as to weather in as far as possible on the first board. Their position is marked by kelp, which always should be avoided in this harbor. Barometer 29.50, thermometer 47 degrees. Sunday, April 17th, 1864. The first and middle parts of the past week were very fine, with a high barometer. Wind generally from the west and west-northwest. But yesterday and today it has been blowing a hard gale from north-northwest, and about 4 o'clock this evening it backed into north, and is now, 8 p.m., raining heavily and blowing a hard gale. We have found another place where the seals assemble in great numbers. It is on this shore, about 1.5 miles from the house. We do not intend to disturb them, unless on account of bad weather during the winter, when we cannot get to the island. On Tuesday morning, one of the men came running in a state of excitement, and told me that there were 2 dogs in the bush. He had left the other man in the bush to watch them till he came and told me. I immediately went to the place where the other man was left, but when I got there the dogs were gone. I saw their tracks, and was satisfied that they had seen dogs, and from the men's description of them, I think they were sheepdogs. One day, about 3 weeks after the wreck, we heard what we all supposed to be a dog barking, but as we had not heard or seen anything of dogs, we had almost forgotten all about it. But it is now evident that there are dogs on the island. At a short distance from where they were seen, we found a dead seal calf, which they had evidently killed, so it appears that they subsist partly on seal's meat. We find that there is another small 4-footed animal, an inhabitant of this island also. This animal burrows, and undoubtedly only comes out at night. We have set snares, but have failed to catch them. Their footmarks are similar to those of a pig. We catch small fish in the creek, which are delicious eating. They resemble the trout, but are very small. It would take 4 of the largest we have yet caught to weigh a pound, but they are very numerous. Barometer 29.50, thermometer 50 degrees. Sunday, April 22nd, 1864. During the past week, the weather has been exceedingly fine and mild. We have had some misty and frosty weather, but no disagreeable weather to speak of. The wind has been generally from north-northwest. On Wednesday and Thursday, the wind was light from the southeast, which is something very unusual. On these 2 days, we went down to Flagstaff Point and erected a board 6 feet long and 2 feet 6 inches wide, painted white, with a large letter N painted blue on it to indicate that they must turn to north. I also secured a bottle to the board to notify to anyone where we are, and giving them some instructions for working up the harbor, But should they not be able to send a boat on shore to get the bottle, the letter N will indicate which way they are to turn, and when they are round the point we shall see them, and I shall get on board as soon as possible. The board is elevated about 60 feet from the mean level of the sea, and will be visible at some distance outside the heads. While we were down there we caught a few very nice codfish, and I took a number of bearings which I had not been able to get before. I also sounded in all directions. My line was only 38 fathoms long, and in many places I could not get bottom. On Monday we went to Figure of 8 Island. We did not find the seals as numerous as previously, the day being very fine, and it being flood tide when we were there. No doubt they were fishing. We took a bull and cow seal, both yearlings, very large and fat. During the week the barometer has been very high. On Wednesday it was at 30.36. Today it is 29.50. Thermometer 51 degrees.